we see the numbers down below, typically top 3 or 4 in the nation across the board in just about every statistical category. Rushing defense, if you look at yards per carry, a little bit further down the list, but little to criticize from 2023. And you alluded to the great offseason moves, of course, that have gained attention. However, it's even more so the guys that have come back, and 2 guys, because of their 5-star recognition coming out of high school, because they came in at the same time, because they play a similar position, basically the same position. We could start with Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau as being linchpins of what should be a strong defense.
There's no doubt when these 2 guys were coming out of high school, as you mentioned their rankings there, 3 years was the thought process, right? And that's the case with a lot of high school recruits, especially big-time recruits. But Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau seemed, they're going to Ohio State. They've produced the Bosa brothers and Chase Young and, a number of other guys. But those 3 in particular that were highly ranked guys, 3 years onto the NFL, having successful NFL careers, you expected that out of those 2 as well. I think you could look at it one of 2 ways, and both are probably have some merit. Did they not do enough individually in their Ohio State career to set themselves up to be a high NFL draft pick? I think so. I mean, you look at JT Tuimoloau, everyone continues to think back to that Penn State game 2 years ago now and be like, that's the possibility. That's the ceiling for him. You just don't see it every game. And that's not to say he hasn't been productive. He certainly has. But I think people expected these huge numbers out of this guy. And instead what you've gotten is a more well-rounded player who can do a lot of different things for Ohio State, but doesn't necessarily rack up a ton of sacks or things like previous defensive ends. Then Jack Sawyer had a good start to his career his freshman year. Sophomore year moves positions to kind of this hybrid role under Jim Knowles, the jack position, and it didn't really work out. And Ohio State quickly figured out that Jack Sawyer needs to be playing as a hand-on-the-ground defensive end, and you saw that last year. And as the season progressed and he kind of settled back in to the more natural role, the numbers really increased. I think the last 3 or 4 games was over half of his statistical production. And, you look at the Missouri game in the Cotton Bowl, Jack Sawyer was probably the star of the show. And if somehow Ohio State is able to score a touchdown or 2, he may be the defensive MVP of that game with his production. So you're hoping that carries over into this year. But either way, you've got 2 really experienced and very talented defensive ends coming back for Ohio State to kind of lead the pass rush and everything else that they can do.
Well, they lead the pass rush, and most of the pass rush, when people think of that skill set, comes from the outside. Is there depth there to the degree that they should need it?
That is the hope. Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry, both junior defensive ends, guys that probably we're expecting to, as we're talking about 3-and-done guys, we're expecting this to be the year that they really get the big opportunity. And with Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau coming back, that opportunity probably isn't as big, but that doesn't mean it won't be there. And look, they're going to have to prove that they deserve to be on the field as part of a rotation, but the Buckeyes also need a bigger rotation than they've had in the past, at least the past few years, because if you're going to play as many games as Ohio State would like to, college football playoff, Big Ten championship, all that stuff included, you're going to need to try and keep Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau fresh, right? So you're going to have to rotate. And those are the 2 main guys that will be a part of that rotation, at least kind of as we stand now. Both guys who have shown flashes in the past, but haven't gotten that big opportunity. And, maybe this won't be the opportunity they expected, but I do expect a larger role for both of them. And I think that they can produce, the way Larry Johnson sees it, the defensive line coach at Ohio State, he needs to see that when JT Tuimoloau comes off, be it Caden Curry or Kenyatta Jackson comes into the game, the drop-off is small, if at all. And I know that's a high bar, but that's the way you're expected to do when you rotate in on Ohio State's defensive line. And that's the challenge for Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson this offseason, is to get to that level.
And so, Pat, if we go inside, of course, Mike Hall moves on. And then we look at Ty Hamilton and Tyleik Williams. And Tyleik Williams is the guy that stands out to me as the guy that has more often shown that at his best, he can be a game wrecker type.
Absolutely. 2023 was a great year for Tyleik Williams. He seriously considered leaving for the NFL, and it was a priority for Ohio State to get him back and keep him on campus. From my understanding, the conversation was, yes, you had one really good year. Come back, show you can do it 2 years in a row, raise that draft stock. NIL certainly probably helped make sure that he didn't just jump to the NFL after one breakout season. So a big deal for Tyleik Williams to be back. Ty Hamilton, also a big deal, but more quietly, I would say. The numbers last year weren't as eye-popping as Tyleik Williams, but as you mentioned, they lose Mike Hall, and you need somebody in there next to Tyleik Williams, right? Ty Hamilton is expected to be that guy, and a guy who, kind of like his brother, Devon Hamilton, during his Ohio State career, just kind of got better each and every year. And this could be the season where you really start to see what Ty Hamilton can bring. He's going to be on the field significantly more than he was in the past. And, well, I won't say significantly. He's been on the field a lot as part of that three-man rotation really last year. And so those are going to be your top two guys that kind of have to lead from the middle. And, it's always hard to judge defensive tackles because they don't always put up the numbers. Tyleik Williams, kind of a guy who does. Ty Hamilton, maybe a guy who works more, off the stats page, but can still be productive for the Buckeyes.